rocketing drag race. Sonic booms and 12,000 horsepower makes this one heart-stopping race to the finish line.
80-foot waves and stoked surfers hanging 10 with the big kahuna of extreme underwater photography.
And German engineering goes back to basics. Volkswagen rolls out and folds up an electrifying two-wheeler.
Hello, I'm Jay Ingram.
And I'm Zai Tong. As you can see, we have a full tilt show for you tonight. And as usual, we have some pretty bizarre and strange stories as well.
That's right, like the world's largest wine glass, like a man who prides himself on escaping from buried coffins, all of that, a lot more. But first, what kind of guy brings a car to an air show?
Bill Braack is the kind of guy who brings a car to an air show, but his car is definitely not run-of-the-mill.
Think of it as something more like a fighter jet on wheels.
It's called Smokin' Thunder. And it lives up to the name.
A lot of noise, a lot of smoke, little mini sonic booms that you'll hear. And that's basically me being a kid. I get to throw fuel out the back of the car and light it, so it's just boom.
At an airport full of fighter jets and racing planes, Bill's car is the fastest thing on the runway.
0 to 400 in approximately 9 seconds.
It's a dragster made of aluminum and magnesium, with an engine from a Navy training jet with a few modifications.
This engine now has a fully articulated afterburner, so it takes the thrust from 3,200 pounds and at sea level, almost 6,500 pounds of thrust, which equates to, depending on which engineer you talk to, between 10 and 12,000 horsepower.
With that much power, if you stood it on its tail, it would take off like a rocket.
The vehicle, with me and fuel, weighs about 2,200 pounds before I start. And then as I'm accelerating down the runway, I'm consuming 3 gallons per second. That's almost 22 pounds every second I'm losing. So if I run for 8 seconds, I lose almost 200 pounds.
Bill isn't content with just blowing fireballs for the crowd. Today, he's going to race a plane.
He'll be coming in at 170 miles per hour. I have to start and light the afterburner when he's just about 12 airplane lengths behind me, so I'm actually rolling when he shoots past me. And then I need the next 2,000 feet to accelerate in excess of 300 miles an hour to catch him and shoot past him.
He's not just battling the plane, he's also fighting the elements.
The elevation here is 5,048 feet here at Stead Field, and then when you factor in the heat, for example, today we should be at about 84 degrees when I go to perform, so the air is very thin, and this old turbine needs good air.
The conditions will keep his speed below 400 miles an hour, but even at, say, 375, braking is a big challenge.
I use a 14-foot ring slot parachute. It's a military parachute that's round, and it has slots all the way around it.
Bill has a couple old-fashioned tricks to keep everything running smoothly, like duct tape.
And all the duct tape is for is to be my wear buffer, if you will, so it doesn't wear out the stuff underneath here.
And baby powder.
We use the baby powder just to decrease friction. This is my lifeline, and I don't want that liability on anyone else's shoulders. That's the driver should always pack their own chute. Tight fit today.
In the cockpit, the controls are simple.
This handle here is the primary parachute, so when it's time to shut down, all of these handles are running forward like this. One motion turns the afterburner off, turns the engine off, and deploys the primary parachute in one motion. So it's very quick. It happens in less than a quarter second. I experience between 4 and 4.5 Gs when I'm accelerating, which is not an aircraft G. It's just like you in the car, just a few more Gs. G loading is pretty constant because I'm continually accelerating faster and faster. And then when I throw the chute out, it's the other way. So if I didn't wear a 5-point harness, you know, it'd throw me out of the car, which would not be good.
Race control, jet car, checking in, we're ready.
It's showtime.
That was awesome.
The thin air kept Bill's top speed to only 370 miles an hour, but it's enough to beat the plane.
Density altitude up here is just our #1 nemesis. But just as I caught him, put the chute out and came right past him. So it's a great race. We'll get the chute picked up and then we'll call for tow to get off the runway.
Just another day of smoke and thunder for the fastest car at the air show. Now, in case you're wondering, the jet car can run on jet fuel, but Bill prefers to run it on regular diesel because it's cheaper and safer. He occasionally fills it up with biodiesel as well, B20 to be precise, which is a mixture of 20% recycled cooking oil and 80% petroleum diesel.
From jet cars to rocket fuel. Does increased space travel mean space traffic and pollution? Well, not if these two have anything to do with it. Burning clean on Daily Planet tomorrow.
Now, Volkswagen's been feeling a little feisty of late. It's #3 in terms of the automakers in the world right now, but its goal, its big ambition is to be #1 by 2018.
A small team working inside VW wants to help power that rise. They've invented a two-wheeled electric vehicle, and they think it could actually help sell four-wheeled vehicles. A Daily Planet crew visited Volkswagen headquarters in Germany to see just what that two-wheeled innovation is all about.
Wolfsburg, home to Europe's biggest car plant, where Volkswagen produces 4,200 autos a day. Today, VW is showing off a new, one-of-a-kind set of wheels. Not the car, it's a luxury model Phaeton. The new vehicle is in the trunk.
The biggest challenge was to figure out a design where we can fold it up that it is so small, that it is roughly 700 millimeters in diameter. So this is Bikey. Bikey itself is a very, very small electric bike, which weighs roughly 20 kilos, goes at 20 kilometers per hour, and has a range of 20 kilometers. So you can roughly ride on it for 1 hour. And so it's really fun to drive. It's lightweight, it's easy, it has a lot of torque when you start off. It's much more quiet than a motor scooter.
There is only one Bikey in the world, this prototype, created by engineer Gerrit Schmidt and his micro-mobility concept team. The bosses at Volkswagen challenged them to come up with a very small new vehicle for cities.
We are a team of roughly 10 people working on it for about 1 year. We were looking on vehicles for urban mobility. If you add this to a car, you can park outside and use this for the small distances within the city.
Early on, they hit upon the idea of a vehicle which folds into a donut shape. The bosses love it.
The first idea we had was to stick it on the back of an SUV where the spare wheel is usually. So that brought in the round shape, we then realized. And from there, our thoughts developed a little bit because we thought not only SUV drivers might need such a concept, but in any car it should be fitted in. This is a plywood model. We wanted to have a feeling, we wanted to have hardware very quickly, because without any hardware, you can't see how this folding you think about on a computer works. And this was the first way to see, like, does it work or does it not? And so we thought a step further and then quickly identified that we don't want to change anything on the car. And so every car has a spare wheel compartment or a spare wheel space, and actually we then fitted it in there.
Designer Nissan Kukam gives Bikey the signature VW look. Clean, simple, innovative. But that means all the cables and mechanical parts have to be hidden away.
You see nothing except the surface of the bike from the outside. The batteries are within this frame, and the whole drivetrain is here in the back hub. So we put a lot of effort to keep this clean design, to put all the components inside.
Fitting everything inside a small, neat package is engineer Martin Klopov's job. He uses software to work and rework the design.
I'm going to zoom in here and show you where the batteries are. You can see them here, these gray boxes. We can also take a look at the motor. With your standard motor, you get something like this, which is pretty wide, and we couldn't make the package to be flat enough to fit in the trunk with a motor like this. So what we did was we took a brushless outrunner motor, and which is much smaller than the one that's in here, and we put a gear for reduction in the hub, and that gave us the possibility to even fit the speed controller in the hub, so everything is one compact unit, and it's in the rear wheel. So here we have the rear folding joint, and what we can see is that it's full of wires over here, because everything coming from the battery going to the motor has to go through this joint. This brake wire is not following the path of the electrical wires, because that would cause too much friction here in this tight bend. So we put it down here rather straight, and we disconnected it at the joint, which is done by this small mechanism here, which automatically disconnects the brake wire when you fold the bike to the trunk position, and when you unfolded it back to driving position, it automatically connects, so you do not have to care for the safety of your brakes.
Very difficult. It took us quite some time. To do something that folds down, it's not too difficult. To do something that folds down so tiny in so few steps without the need of using any tools, we haven't seen this before. So basically, we got like two mechanical brakes, as you know it from motorcycles or bikes. We got a light in the front, a light in the back to ensure safety while riding, so that you can be seen when you ride. We got a neat little display here, which if it's turned on, then you see your speed, so how fast are you driving. And what's more important with electric bikes, you see how far you still can go.
Garrett's bosses like Bikey so much, they give it a splashy debut in the world's fastest growing auto market, at the Auto China Show in Beijing. There might be only one Bikey in the world right now, but the plan is to make a more advanced working prototype.
We want to improve the possibilities of connecting it to the car, linking it to the car, which means, for example, having it recharged while it is in the trunk of the car, but as well to integrate it into the navigational system. That means if you go with your car, then your navigational system of the car says, park your car here, take out your bikey from the trunk and ride the rest of the journey with that bike.
Garrett's goal is to offer Bikey to anyone who's buying a Volkswagen. It seems Bikey's journey is just beginning.
It's alive! Halloween is over, but it seems like the dead can still rise from the grave. Daily Planet will dig up the dirt on this next. Still to come on Discoveries, high alert on Indonesia's Mount Merapi. What's worse than one gigantic volcanic eruption? How about 21 of them?
And later, imagine trekking with this contraption strapped to your back. Weird Planet has all the details later.
But first, it is the return of the dead. Only this time, this is not a movie. Dean Gunnarsson spent 42 hours buried in a steel coffin 6 feet underground, no food, no water, no washroom, for what he is calling his most dangerous escape yet.
Dean Gunnarsson, escape artist, joins me now from Winnipeg. So, Dean, how does it feel to be out?
Well, obviously, I'm very, very happy to be above ground, to smell the fresh air, to see the sunshine again. It was pretty dark and claustrophobic and cramped in there. So like I said, it was great. You know, to give my wife a hug and stuff when I got out, it was a good day.
Now walk us through this. How did you go about doing this? Did you have a medical team advising you, or?
Well, we actually used a lot of different people and a lot of different advice because there was so many different calculations and things that we had to be aware of. The weight of the dirt, what size the coffin was, that the coffin could withstand all the weight, how much air I was going to need. Again, going without food and water for the entire time. There was a lot of different elements and things that we had to pair. And of course, you know, my health, I lost almost 10% of my body mass over this ordeal.
Now, was that because of dehydration, or?
Yeah, well, again, I had to start, for the last few weeks, I had to start lowering my calorie intake because I couldn't just stop eating right away. So I had to start lowering that down. And again, I don't smoke or I don't drink alcohol or drugs or anything, but I do drink a lot of caffeine. I love my coffee in the morning. I love my soft drinks. So I had to get that out of my system as well. So I didn't go with any caffeine withdrawal, but I had to get all the other food out of my body. So, because when I was locked in the coffin, again, one thing we couldn't put, there was no washroom facilities. So obviously I didn't want to be stuck in there for a few days and having to go to the bathroom.
Now, obviously, for most people, this is, you know, the most claustrophobic one can imagine being. So what was going on in your head as you were in there?
Yeah, it was totally claustrophobic. And, you know, it's dark, it was cold steel, it was damp. Again, Winnipeg is built on the old lake bottom from the last glacier age. So it's all clay. So when they dug out the hole on Friday to bury me, it filled full of water. So we had to put in a whole sub pump system to pump the water out of the grave. So the entire time I was down there, they were pumping water out to make sure that my coffin didn't fill full of water. So it was quite, you know, kind of, I shouldn't say terrifying, because I had to try and keep my mind clear. And the psychological aspects of being locked in such a confined space, like I said, in that darkness and the isolation, without, you know, going crazy or panicking or you know, having fear overcome me.
Now, what about oxygen? You were able to breathe down there.
Yes, obviously because of the space of the coffin, I would have ran out of air within a short period of time. So we devised a air ventilation system to bring air in, fresh air, and of course to get the old air out, so I didn't succumb to carbon dioxide or anything like that. So I did have air going in, but again, it was kind of creepy and unnerving a little bit, you know, the air coming in. But what we did find too was that with this air ventilation system, people could come stand on my grave and talk to me. I couldn't see them or they couldn't see me, but they could talk to me through this tunnel. And so they would ask me questions and interact with me. So it was kind of odd that I was going to, and I noticed one of the interesting things when I was in this isolation, again, because I couldn't see or anything like that, my sense of smell increased. And if somebody came up with a cup of coffee, I could smell it.
The coffee again. Let me ask you, what would happen in a real world scenario? Because obviously you have air to breathe here and an oxygen tube, but what would actually happen to someone? I imagine they'd asphyxiate.
Well, obviously, yeah, if they were put in the coffin and buried alive with no air, yeah, once that air in the coffin within a few hours and stuff would be used up and be replaced with the CO2 from your lungs, you would just go to sleep. It would be a terrifying, I think, death, knowing that you were trapped in there and nobody could see you or hear you and you're 6 feet under, you know, like 3 tons of dirt and mud. I think it'd be a terrible way to go. And if you search on the internet, you'll find that this is stuff that's actually happened over the last, you know, few hundred years. Like, I mean, you know, digging up these old graves and finding people buried alive and claw marks in the coffins. And, you know, I can only imagine, like, what it would be like because I've gone through it. I know one thing for sure, when my time in this earth is done, I'm not getting buried. I'm getting cremated. I want to be above ground. I want my ashes to go in a flower bed, a tree planted on me. I want to be rejuvenated and be a tree in the next life.
That's wonderful. I'm glad you learned a great big lesson from doing this stunt. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dean.
Oh, thank you very much. I'm happy to be here and great to talk to you. And like I said, man, appreciate the day. It's always better to be on the top side of the green than the bottom.
Dean Gunderson is an escape artist. He joined me today from Winnipeg, Manitoba.
So you know what I was wondering? He wasn't like buried in the classical way that people actually were buried and died, right? He had air and so on. But I wonder if he had the same sort of feelings of what that might be like. We had a guy on the show once, Gordon Giesbrecht, who drove a snowmobile into the water deliberately to demonstrate how if you're not wearing the right suit, you'll take on so much water and drown.
Right.
And just before they, there was a crew there, just before they picked him up, he tried to imagine, okay, I'm all alone, what would this feel like? And he had a real sense of how horrible it would be to die that way. And I'm just wondering if this was the case too.
I imagine it wouldn't have been exactly the same for him because he was able to communicate with people at the surface, because he had oxygen, because he had, didn't have to go to the bathroom while he was in that coffin, But as you know,
if you're in an MRI and you start to, there's always people like within 20 feet of you can still panic though.
Absolutely.
I'm impressed. Breaking the waves and capturing it on camera. Daily Planet heads to Hawaii to shoot with the world's most extreme underwater cameraman. Surf is up next.
Welcome back to Daily Planet. I'm Zaya Top.
I'm Jay Ingram. Maybe the day after Halloween, but we still have lots of treats and maybe some tricks just for you.
Like this, what's being touted as the largest wine glass ever. The details just ahead on Discoveries.
Plus, intense parachuting 101. We go behind the scenes to see how the Canadian military gets their troops on the ground on target.
And later this week's Biology, we're going to get into the science of taking a long winter nap as we head to a hibernation lab.
But first, for a lot of people, going to work means driving into the concrete jungle, sitting in an office surrounded by four walls.
But for one man in Hawaii, the drive to work usually ends up on a beach, and those walls are made of water several meters high. He has got one very big cubicle.
He's a man riding the wave of technology so he can be immersed in more natural forces.
It's really Mother Nature. It's like we're just pushing a button. Mother Nature really does the work.
Modest words indeed, but Mike Prickett is much more than a button pusher. He is the world's preeminent extreme underwater cameraman, creating his own special equipment to catch the waves in more ways than one.
Technology, you gotta love it. Different cameramen that specialize in just camera operations. I'm a specialized director of photography, and I'm more of an extreme director of photography, and I try to shoot anything crazy.
And he'll go anywhere or build anything to get it.
The craziest stuff that we shoot is probably really big waves. When you look up at the waves, it looks like it's the clouds coming down at you. They're like, 80-foot waves. That's really crazy to shoot because it's a life and death situation.
And Mike Prickett definitely knows about life or death situations.
When I was a young kid, I think I was 18 or 19, I was in a car accident and I broke both my legs. I broke my right leg in 33 places and my left in 7. So I was in a wheelchair for a year, and they said I would never walk right again and never be able to run. So they said the best thing for you to do for therapy is to get in the water and start swimming. Well, I was a still photographer back then, and I thought, well, I'll put my camera in a little water box and I'll swim, and that'll be my therapy every day. And plus I might get some shots of my friend surfing, and that's kind of how it all started.
His home is the North Shore of Oahu, perhaps the best training ground in the world for honing his craft. But he was always craving more, how to get that shot that no one else could get. He's embraced technology to get him there.
And then we kind of collect these toys, powered up. And we hide them from people. We just break it out for a second to get a certain shot. People go, how did they do that?
Basically, he does it by staying ahead of the curve and the wave.
We had these little underwater dive scooters, and we were trying to track surfers and track canoes and stuff underwater, and nothing was really working.
So he kept looking for ways to build on his scooter. As vastly improved battery power was being developed, he knew he was onto something.
When we saw that coming out, we're like, hey, this is something that we need to invest some money in and get it working for our cameras. We got some cool shots under there.
Now he has a piece of equipment that's as extreme as he is.
This underwater scooter that can go for 2 hours and go like 20 knots and 140 feet underwater, basically like a big jet ski.
Just crank the hand controls, off you go.
So as you're diving, you can keep up with a fish or a boat or a water skier, and it's kind of like an underwater dolly. It's pretty amazing.
But there are other tricks of technology up his wetsuit sleeve. Sometimes when Mike's living beneath the waves, he does it in his yellow submarine. A mini sub, really. Just another part of his very special work environment.
We hang tanks there, so after we're diving, we come over there and we acclimate before we go higher, you know, to get out so we don't get the bend. So we use that sub as, it's kind of like a little work hut underwater. And then we work out of there using compressed air, or we're using rebreathers.
It's kind of like a scuba tank on steroids.
We were looking for a good way to stay underwater longer and to maximize our shooting time. We modified it so that we can go down a couple hundred feet and work as our little office out of there, and we can stay there, geez, almost all day.
But he wouldn't be able to spend all that time down there if his cameras weren't up to the task.
I've been making my own water housings and working with welders and making different kind of prototypes for each camera that work the way I want it to work. Because I guess if you want it done right, you got to do it yourself. I probably have about 30 or 40 housings over the years. This is scattered throughout the garage. My wife's yelling at me every day about it.
Yes, there are some hazards in his line of work. Some of them a lot more serious than just an overcrowded garage.
You know, there's a lot of danger involved when you're underwater, especially when you're in really big waves. There's a lot of technique and wave knowledge that you need to know to be out there in those big waves.
Most important is getting to know your surroundings. How much water is underneath the wave? What are the currents doing? What's the quickest route to safe water?
As we try to stay deep enough down and let the wave go by, that the surfer go by.
But when all's said and done, Mike Prickett wouldn't trade his world for any of it.
When you're underwater and you're diving under a wave and the surfers are going by, and you dive under and you turn around and you see the surfers going by, the feeling you get is just, it's unreal. I mean, I'm a surfer, but I'd rather shoot than surf. It's weird. I get more enjoyment out of actually shooting somebody going by my head and getting like inches from the camera. Gives me much more excitement than actually catching the wave myself.
Plus the fact that his thirst for technology allows him to be at one with nature.
I went out the other day and the dolphins thought I was a dolphin because we were just jumping in and out of the water like that, and then they just joined me, and it's neat to kind of become part of nature with these toys and technology. I love technology, man. It's great.
Okay, time to check out the stories making headlines for November 1st, 2010. I cannot even imagine the hangover the next day, but you are looking at the world's biggest wine glass. It can hold 100 bottles, but no one at the official unveiling seemed to want to dip into the odd mix of red, white, and rosé being poured in with abandon. It measures in at 2.4 meters in height and 1.65 meters in diameter. This glass has one other advantage over the traditional ones. It's really plexiglass, so it's less likely to shatter if you're ever able to lift it. The previous giant wine glass record was set in Portugal in 1998.
Now this makes that last story sound way less fun. Alcohol is the most dangerous drug of all, according to a new British study released today. More dangerous than heroin or even crack cocaine. The researchers looked at how destructive drugs are, both to the people taking them and to society as a whole. And while heroin, crack cocaine, and crystal meth are the most harmful to the individuals using them, alcohol ranked higher overall because of its incredibly wide use. Plus, when alcohol is consumed to excess, it damages every single vital organ. And believe it or not, alcohol is connected to more crime than most other drugs.
The largest eruption yet as Mount Merapi continues to rumble. This is the scene in Indonesia today as hot gas and debris shot into the air, accompanied by deafening explosions. The debris has spread out in a 6-kilometer swath to the southeast, and Merapi isn't the only volcano that's a concern to the Indonesians. Officials have just raised the alert level on 21 others. Many of them have been belching black ash or have shown recent increases in seismic activity. While Indonesia is home to almost 200 volcanoes, normally only 5 to 10 are on a heightened alert list at any time.
A fuel leak on Shuttle Discovery is finally fixed, so that means launch is a go for Wednesday afternoon. It's going to be kind of crowded. Not only are there 6 human astronauts and 1 robonaut heading to the International Space Station, 16 mice are hitching a ride for a mission of their own. They are hoping, well, they may not be hoping anything, they're helping NASA understand why spaceflight makes humans more susceptible to viruses and other infections. The mice will spend 11 days in orbit. When they come back to Earth, half of them are going to be exposed to a cold virus. By studying the mouse immune response, scientists hope to help not only astronauts going to space, but also maybe immune-suppressed children and the elderly.
And pandas are coming to 3 Canadian zoos. China has agreed to a long-term loan of 2 pandas, but we're still going to have to wait a little while to see them. They're going to be at the Toronto Zoo starting in 2012 for about 5 years, before then heading on to Calgary and then Granby. These rare animals come with quite a price tag, though. The pandas alone will cost $1 million each a year, a fee to be paid to China. Then there's also the cost of their specially imported bamboo and an all-new enclosure that must be built for them. Their stay in Toronto will cost more than $20 million, but it should be offset by all the visitors who will be eager to see them.
Asimo, you know, that's Honda's humanoid robot, is celebrating its first decade this week. Asimo was one of the first and still one of the most advanced humanoid robots out there, thanks to constant upgrades. Asimo can recognize faces, that's running, and as of 2009, it can quote-unquote read minds by monitoring blood flow and electrical activity in people's brains. Honda hopes their robot can be a companion for the elderly someday, or even help school children navigate crosswalks. Right now, the researchers are focusing on developing Asimo's intelligence. They also want to build better relationships between people and humanoid robots.
Don't worry, folks, this ground squirrel isn't dead. It's hibernating. Wake up, squirrely squirrel. You snooze, you lose. That's coming up on Zyology. Squirrel. Squirrel?
Halloween's over. It's November 1st. Time to get out the hats and mitts, and time for us to show you what Zai's learned about that very curious winter phenomenon, hibernation.
Winter is here. That means that animals like bears, chipmunks, and ground squirrels will soon be settling down to begin 5 to 8 months of hibernation. And that got me thinking, what is hibernation? How do animals know when to go to sleep and when to wake up again? Dr. Hannah Carey and her team at the University of Wisconsin want to know that too. They study hibernation in ground squirrels in this special lab. The entire room is actually a walk-in fridge kept at a chilly 4 degrees Celsius. Every winter, the squirrels hibernate here, where the scientists can keep a close eye on what happens. And what happens is amazing. First, the squirrel's body temperature plummets from about 37 degrees all the way down to a mere 5 degrees. Their heart rates way down too, from hundreds of beats per minute to just 2 or 3. Same with their breathing. While they're in this state known as torpor, they only take 1 or 2 breaths per minute. It is a great way to save energy. A lot of the food we eat is used to maintain our body temperature at a constant 37 degrees. But if you can cool down and slow down, you save a lot of energy, which is a good idea in times like winter when there's not much to eat. Scientists don't know exactly what tells the animals that it's time to hibernate. It happens at the same time every year, even if it's not cold. They suspect it's triggered by a body clock similar to the one that governs our daily waking and sleeping. But hibernation is much stranger than sleep. For one thing, every 2 weeks the animals have what is known as an interbout arousal. Their body temperature comes all the way back up to normal. They stay in their burrows, groom themselves, and sleep a bit. And then they cool off and go back into torpor. Dr. Carey and her team aren't sure yet why that happens. Maybe a higher body temperature is needed to repair the body or to keep the brain functioning properly. But they think these huge fluctuations in body temperature could provide clues to saving human lives. Large temperature fluctuations are usually very damaging to our bodies. So if we can figure out how hibernating animals safely cycle through these changes, then maybe we could figure out a way to make organs donated for transplant last longer, or even how to slow down the metabolism of someone who's sick or injured until treatment can save them. That's still a long way off. But meanwhile, ground squirrels do it with no effort at all. They'll wake up in the spring and start all over again.
Okay, so you know your Facebook user ID. It appears a number of Facebook application developers have been tapping into the user IDs and selling them to online data brokers and networks. Why? So advertisers can better target you with their advertisements. Well, Facebook's clamping down on those guys. They're being banned from the social networking site for 6 months, and in addition, they will also be audited to ensure they're complying with Facebook's privacy policy going forward. For their part, Facebook says there were fewer than a dozen of these rogue developers, and none had any applications in the top 10 most popular apps. Facebook, that's why they were doing it probably. Facebook also said that while some user IDs were leaked, no private user data was compromised. What do you think of this story? What do you think of Facebook's response? Tweet us and let us know. All right, we didn't only want to hear your feedback. We don't only want to hear that. We want to see your Discovery-inspired videos and photos. Take a look at one such viewer upload. This comes by way of Brian Baker. It was taken this past May at the Calgary Robot Games. What you're looking at is a line chaser robot made of Lego. That's pretty cool. There you go. If you got your own do-it-yourself robot like that one, or any other kind of robot, or really anything, we want to see it right here. Head to Planet U, click on the upload link. All right, if you're on the Discovery site, here's another thing you can check out, Canada's Worst Driver. There are actually cast bios, image galleries, and web extras like this one.
Viewers have written us literally by the hundreds saying, would you please stop ruining antique vintage automobiles? I mean, we killed a Rolls Royce that had its original paint job. We killed an old Marlin from the 60s that was a beautiful car. We killed an old Cordoba, and a guy wrote into the Discovery Channel website saying exactly how many Cordobas were produced in Canada that year. And it was only like 3,000 and some, and he knew to the number. And so we get all these letters saying, please stop killing all these antique cars. So we took those letters to heart, and this year we bought a brand new Camaro, like brand new, fresh out of the box, plastic on the seats, new car smell, 26 kilometers on the odometer. Now she's got 151 clicks on the odometer. Looks like it's worth about $40. Just destroyed. I mean, the bumper's gone, the wheel wells are broken, neither door opens up properly because of the dents and the twangs, there is no back end, there's no headlights. She's a wreck. However, the engine is lovely. Purrs like a kitten.
Now, for that link, head to the Worst Driver site. Want to get in touch with us? Number of ways you can do that. Head on over to Facebook, Twitter, or of course, planetu.ca. We're not just on the web anymore. Download our free Daily Planet app. It's on iTunes. That's it for today's Planet U.
Next up, we're taking a giant leap. We're taking you inside a training mission with the Canadian military where you really shouldn't be afraid of heights. That's next.
If you know somebody who likes playing darts, you know how satisfying it can be to hit the bullseye, even though most of the time you might not want to. This next story is about an entire troop whose job it is to hit the bullseye every time. No pressure, right?
To make matters even more challenging, the bullseye that they have to hit is hundreds or thousands of feet below the plane that they are jumping from. Here's Mark Miller with the story.
Look this way! Wind 7!
Inside a packed C-130 Hercules,
Get ready! Get ready!
members of Bravo Company are seconds from the drop zone.
5 seconds!
When the green light comes on,
Green on!
the aircraft empties in just 40 seconds. It's all perfectly synchronized, but the science of getting soldiers safely on target takes a major effort and months of training.
In our line of work, we have to ensure that we're on target on time.
Go! Go!
A jumper's journey begins on the ground.
Prepare for a tree landing.
At CFB Edmonton, this is the parachute simulation room for the PPCLI 3rd Battalion.
This is the mock-up for the C-130 aircraft, the Hercules. Just relax.
With over 1,500 jumps under his belt, Master War Officer Andy Hoolan is one of the battalion's jump masters.
Some guys, experience a little bit of anxiety, maybe, when they exit the aircraft for the first time. But for a lot of the veterans and the old dogs, it's just another day at the office.
To get 40 soldiers out of an airplane quickly and safely,
okay, hook up.
The Army still uses what's called a static line system. Each paratrooper static line
Stand by!
is connected to a cable on the aircraft.
Go!
So as they leave the door, the chute opens automatically.
The snap fastener is going to grab the deployment bag, just like that. And his body weight pulls out the suspension lines in order. Now the canopy itself starts to pull out of the canopy. The deployment bag, static line, and snap fastener remain attached to the aircraft. The jumper and his canopy now start to descend towards the earth.
Everything is supposed to unfold in less than 4 seconds. But if the main chute fails,
you have a complete malfunction.
Jumpers must instinctively pull their reserves. Paratroopers also have to perfect their landings. To avoid breaking bones, they practice hitting the ground first with 5 key muscle areas.
The balls of the feet, the calves, the thighs, the buttocks, and then diagonally across the back.
It's 5 hours before another training jump.
Starboard side!
40 paratroopers line up in the order they will sit on the Hercules.
This will be my 12th jump. This will be my 11th jump. Nervous, but happens all the time.
He's too loose.
As jumpers rig their equipment,
he's done good so far.
The jump masters scrutinize each soldier's kit for any potential malfunctions.
Is that when you hit the ground, you're expected to do a job. And if the equipment's not serviceable, you're not going to be any good to the rest of us when we get there.
Each static line jumper wears a parachute known as the CT-1.
35-foot parabolic round canopy.
The CT-1 is designed for mass drops at altitudes as low as 800 feet.
You can fill the air with parachutists.
Stand by! Stand by!
You can get a lot of guys on quickly from a low altitude, by day or by night.
With parachute, weapons, and equipment combined, paratroopers jump with an extra 100 pounds strapped to their bodies.
Aircraft approach will be north to south.
Today's mission, jump from 1,250 feet into drop zone Buxton, an area only 2 kilometers long.
Move now.
But as Bravo Company heads to the airfield, the jump is in jeopardy. There's an ominous prairie sky, and winds are well above the 13-knot limit for jumping. 2 hours before jump time, paratroopers put on their game faces. Check gear once again.
You're okay, jumper. Have a good jump.
You guys are in for a trip.
Bravo Company loads in proper jump order.
Rolling now.
Soon the Hercules is in the air and inbound for the drop zone.
They have so many other things to think about that you'll be out of the plane before you realize that you should have been nervous in the first place.
Okay, the ramp and doors coming open.
Before the static line jumpers go, the C-130's back ramp opens up and free-fall paratroopers, including Jumpmaster Hoolan, make the high-altitude leap into the drop zone.
3 jumpers away.
Wind's about 7 knots like this. It's pretty favorable conditions. Not bad at all.
On the ground, weather conditions are sent back to the aircraft.
I'll give him the wind direction and the speed in knots.
On the final pass over the drop zone, a device called a wind drift indicator is launched from the aircraft. The WDI descends at the same rate as a jumper.
I can see it floating down right now.
Tells the aircrew how far they will drift off course.
The drop zone controller on the ground is going to tell him 6 o'clock, 400 meters, or 4 o'clock, whatever the distance is.
So that when the jumpers do dispatch, they drift onto the actual center of the drop zone.
Stand up! Get ready! Get ready!
With all the data in, the jumpers are signaled to hook up.
1 minute warning!
Hook up!
Everybody removes their snap fasteners and they hook it up to the anchor line cable.
In the final moments, all eyes are on the jump master and the man in front of them.
Check your equipment!
And this is the last confirmation that the jump master receives from the jumpers that they're all good to go.
The navigator makes his final calculation.
250 right, 700 short. 250 right, 700 short.
Position the aircraft to get the jumpers on target.
7 knots, 7 knots.
Finally, the winds look good.
5 seconds!
The red light turns to green.
The jump master drops his arm and then all the jumpers start to leave the aircraft.
They exit both sides of the aircraft. Jumpers are spaced about 70 meters apart.
The jumpers have to have good, strong exits to ensure that they don't collide with the guy exiting from the opposite side of the aircraft.
It's a clean exit for all 40 soldiers.
Get the job done. That's what we always do.
Falling at a rate of 1,000 feet per minute, the troops are all on the ground in just over a minute.
It's extremely satisfying when we can safely exit the aircraft with all the jumpers and hit the drop zone, ultimately so we can carry on with the mission.
Now the fun's over. How was it?
Good.
The final task, they move to the drop zone rendezvous site.
Port, starboard. Port.
Today's jump is a success. The paratroopers pack up and start getting ready to do it all over again tomorrow.
Gathering weather data and basket weaving. What do they have in common? Find out on Weird Planet next. Tuesday on Daily Planet, Darwin, Australia is under attack by crocs. Our crew and a team of crocodile experts fight to keep the city safe. That's Tuesday on Daily Planet.
Time now for the very strange hobby edition of Weird Planet. Now, we've heard about art imitating life, but what about art imitating climatic data?
That's right. Check out these intricate baskets. They're the work of Natalie Maybach. She collects weather data from various sources, online observations from satellites, offshore buoys, and weather stations, plus her own decidedly low-tech inventions made with things found in the local kitchen aisle in her hardware store.
She then takes the info and weaves it into these creations. And she finds, she says, basket weaving gives her a perfect grid to record all the data.
I have to say, those are some of the most astonishing baskets, the most beautiful ones I've ever seen.
They look like some of the fractal images that are created by, you write the right equations.
Yeah, lovely.
They're amazing.
And that's it for today's show.
And why would you do that?
I don't know.
Sorry, anyway. Didn't mean. Tomorrow's Tuesday, and that means super slow-mo day, so we've got to slow things down. And we are going to get ostriches to run slowly. Also a brand new Mindbender. See you tomorrow. I'm Jay Ingram.
And I'm Zai Tong. Good night.